Hi, my name is Sam Led, and welcome to The Fearless Now. This is for you, and you in the nosebleed seats if you're looking for an easier way to approach anxiety, stress, and unhealthy habits from the inside out. There's no techniques and no strategies, so sit back, relax, and let me be your peace of mind Uber driver here on The Fearless Now. Hey, everybody, my name is Sam Led. This is The Fearless Now podcast. I'm a transformational coach. And I love this work. I love being speaking into this felt thing, this microphone, kicking fresh new flavors of insight in your ears. And I have a really, really special guest. She's across the pond. Actually, she's across the country, across the pond, across some more land, and then some. She's hailing from New Zealand. I've been wanting to talk to her for a long time. Siobhan Friel. She's a transformational coach, 3 principles coach. She's a lovely person. And I'm just tickled pink that you're here with me today. And thank you. Thank you for coming on.
Oh, Sam, thank you so much for having me. As you know, I've been really, really excited to speak to you. Just a tiny bit.
I didn't pay her to say that at all.
We just did a short practice of how to pronounce my name, but you did not as well as what you did in the rehearsal. So it's Siobhan Friel, and I'm very happy to be here on the podcast.
What did I say?
Friel, but that's okay.
Friel. Okay. ADD moment there. I blame it on my neurochemicals. Anyways, yes. And talking about neurochemicals, actually, I was been doing a lot of swimming in the ocean because the water temperatures, it's usually like, I don't know if you know the Celsius Fahrenheit conversion, but it's pretty cold in the Pacific and dark. It's getting warmer. And the other day I was, not really paying attention because I grew up swimming, grew up surfing all my life. So I started swimming in the ocean, and all of a sudden I started getting sucked out to sea, literally. And I'm like, wait, what's going on here? Like, this is strange. And I've been surfing since I was like 3 or 4 years old. I've been, a water baby. I grew up on the beach all my life. I mean, sucked out to sea. And thankfully, I kind of figured out what was going on. It was a rip current. And which for a lot of us, that even people that have been swimming, love the water, been surfing, it's still pretty scary. It's, why am I being sucked? What did I do wrong? I'm being sucked out to sea. I just wanted to have some fun and enjoy the water. I didn't panic. Initially, I'm like, oh shit. I swam parallel to shore, and I finally got back. It was pretty tiresome, and it scared the crap out of me. Right now, this is a guy I've been, I grew up basically on the beach most of my life. And that moment being sucked out to sea in real time got me thinking about, how our mind works and using it as a good metaphor. And the interesting thing is the next day, I just went to the beach, parked the car. I usually run down quickly to the beach, just getting because it's so cold. Even in the summer, it's a little warmer. And I got to the shoreline and I stopped in fear. And it wasn't that there was any riptides because it was calm. It was low tide, very calm. But I'm like, oh yeah, I see what's going on. I see what my brain's up to. And that's kind of like, what we share with our clients, like how we get sucked into thought. We're not seeing it when when we forget how to use the equipment, kind of.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And it's just like, oh yeah, can't beat the system.
Yeah, so true. And when you were getting sucked into like that, I'm sorry, I don't know the words. Did you say rip current?
Very good.
Was that? Well, thank you.
You speak. Listen, you speak better than I do. I'm just an American.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. When you were getting sucked into the rip current, that kind of makes me think that of when clients or all humans are getting sucked into the rip current of their thinking, right. And that you think that you're going to definitely drown and die, right? And that's how it feels. But that's not what's actually happening. You were actually out at sea. I'm just kind of expanding on your metaphor and thinking, hold on though, but what happened if you actually died, but you didn't? You're still here with us, so that's awesome.
Thank you. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, this is me here in real time. I'm not an apparition or the hologram. I didn't come back, but it's so true. And the mind plays a game all the time, and we forget all the time. And that's hard for don't you think that's hard for we want to help people see their own experience of thought and thinking, that it's moving through us, that we're not the sum total of all that.
Yes.
Thought and thinking, that there's so much more. But then we innocently get caught up. I was the tape recorder of what happened, that whole experience, that whole story my mind was creating, because it wanted to keep me from drowning.
Yes, and that's what a mind does. That's what it does. That's right. Its job. So, of course, that happened. I mean, that in itself isn't a bad thing. And when we can kind of see that narration is happening incessantly, it kind of loses its power when we realize it doesn't actually mean anything.
And it's also kind of like, once it loses its teeth, once it loses its kind of, hold on you, we then kind of move on with our day or whatever, but then we forget again. It's like there's a book I was gleaning through, someone left in my house. It's called Memory, where this guy lives many lifetimes. It's a brilliant book. It's kind of a girly book, but it's actually really interesting. And I was just reading a couple of pages, and this is a guy who dies and then comes back with the memory of his past life. Right? But in vivid detail. And that doesn't happen with us with thought. Like, we're constantly moving through thought, right? We're constantly moving through this experience of thought. And then we kind of get so caught up in that experience that we forget the memory. It's like, what's that movie with Jim Carrey? With Spotless Mind? I think Kate Winslet.
Oh, Sunshine of a Spotless Mind?
Yeah.
Oh, Eternal Sunshine.
Eternal Sunshine. Right. And it's like that's the same for me, at least. I don't want to speak for the entire collective out there, but for me, it's like you forget, like you're still living this experience of thought and all the experiences that come with it. And it's like, oh yeah, I'm not going to beat the system.
Yeah, that's so true. And I'm kind of finding that a lot with myself at the moment. And I wonder what your experience is with this, Sam, when you're working with your clients. So what we want to do is really kind of show our clients and all the humans out there, like how the stuff works, right? How our human experience is created. And so once people really get a feel for that, like we're feeling our thinking and all the other cool stuff that we talk about. But like, how do you maybe implement this is how it works. This is why it's awesome. But by the way, you're going to forget about that a ton and think you're back in it. Like, it's like a cycle, really. Because I like to kind of like be reinforcing that with clients. Like, this is all the cool stuff that's happening when you know how humans work. By the way, you're going to forget a bunch, and me too. And kind of like normalizing that and talking about funny things that happen when we forget, and kind of like implementing that as part of the deal. All this cool stuff, you'll forget about it. Then it's back and you'll forget again. Yeah. Repeat,
But I get the question, why? I'm like, I don't know. It's
right.
It's just how it works. It's like
the mystery.
And it's,
Isn't it fun?
A lot of, like we don't question gravity. We don't question like the sun's going to come up. I mean, those things are kind of autonomic. But when it comes to, because we have this machine, this supercomputer between our ears, that's, narrating putting together a story in, split second time, that's packaged up for us to, to look at. And we think in the moment, I think that story in the moment sometimes, because it feels real. I mean, we do feel our thinking, and we sometimes, I don't know. There's no answer for it. It just is.
Yeah, exactly. It just is.
Yeah.
When you said the gravity thing, then it kind of made me think, if we had the same questions around gravity that we do around our human experience, people would maybe say, well, why does gravity let a brick fall on a child's head? Yeah. Like that kind of thing. Like, and it's like, well, we don't know. Like, gravity is just working how it's working. And that's why the forgetting thing is, it is what it is. And if we kind of make peace with that and move on, then isn't that better?
Yeah. Yeah. And it's interesting, like when we do get caught up and like we get, like if I get into an argument with my partner or a family member, and it's the old tape is starting to play, that we all have that old tape, and we're supposed to be enlightened, we're supposed to be no. That doesn't have. We're all sharing our experience together, and I think especially for a very effective coach like the Michael Neals and the Angus Mahinis and the Siobhans of the world, by being okay with forgetting that you're gonna kind of mess up. Being okay with all our frailties. It's, in the moment you don't frailties because the ego's screaming at us. But when everything kind of calms down, then we kind of we can take a step back. But again, people think when they go to a coach, and I don't know, maybe if you want to share your experience with maybe a difficult client, but from my experience, a lot of people that come to see me, they think that we're going to do this, we're going to work on this, and it's all going to be better again. And I just point them back to who they are, but they think that, okay, I spent all this money and all this time.
Yes.
It's going to be like puppy dogs and ice cream. And I said, well,
yes. Yes.
I would call it a Sid Banks quote. Like, yeah, well, life's a contact sport anyway. You're going to get knocked around from time to time. But
yeah, I definitely see that. Definitely. And so believing that if you're working with a coach that you're going to feel awesome all the time is quite a damaging misconception, because that's just not how it works as a human. And that's not our job. Like, I don't see my job as helping people feel like good all the time, because I think there's this absolutely beautiful richness in the contrast of life. Yeah. Like how we only kind of appreciate the day after the night and a hot drink when we're really cold, like all that cool stuff. And it's very true that we can't experience one without the other. So that's why I like to think of, like, when I'm caught up, like misbelieving where my experience is coming from, like forgetting, like we just talked about, then when I'm out of it again, it just makes me appreciate even more. I'm like, oh, I forgot, and now I remember, and it feels awesome. And you don't get that without having its opposite, right?
Well said. No, it's so interesting that you can look at it that way, but still forget again. You forget again. But then be okay with forgetting again. But it's interesting, like when we take our foot off the gas a little bit and kind of be more self-introspective, it loosens things up a little bit. And, when a client is really feeling they're thinking that they had a tough day, or there's something that's really they're caught up in, they don't see it like we all don't see it at the moment. What's really going on, that we're just sped up in the machinery, that we just got to like take a step back. And then a client would say to me, well, how do you do that? When you're about to go and do a presentation at work, you go up and do it. You just go up and do it.
Yeah.
Like before I got on this call with you, I was anxious because I don't know. I was just anxious. Who knows why?
Yeah.
I don't need to explain. Like, we don't need an explanation for.
Yes.
And people
I really
want an explanation for it because they're because it's kind of like, and I'm, I love the old Sid Banks videos. Like, people, the one person in the room, he keeps asking, these questions, the same question over and over again. You can't answer those questions because I'm also human, living a human experience, and I might be caught up, and I need to put the engines in neutral maybe for a second.
Yes. Like, we are obsessed with finding the answers and finding reasons and explanations and tagging and categorizing all the elements of, well, what about this and what about that? We talk about needing closure, or we talk about needing to know why that happened. And it's like, you know what?
So funny you mentioned closure. I was talking to someone exactly about closure. Like,
oh, right. Well, I mean, like, closure.
I can write down closure on a piece of paper, and here you go.
Yes.
And does it feel like closure to you? I mean,
exactly. Yeah, it's completely made up. But funny, our relationship with something like that. We could have someone give us a selection of what the closure reasons are, and somehow, like, how does that even help us? But I think it's because the brain is constantly trying to keep us alive, right? So to have things run efficiently, to have things filed away neatly, to have like things closed off, that keeps it like focused on its day-to-day operations of like, keeping us alive. So it doesn't like all these loose ends flying around. It doesn't like, oh, well, what do you mean by the 3 principles? And why did that relationship end? And why am I forgetting again? It doesn't like those open-ended, like, meh, sorry, don't know. That's just the way it goes.
Right, 'cause that's what a brain does.
Right.
And I think people that have gone through a lot of tough stuff in their life, they've become habituated to being scared of the shoe dropping, trauma, if you went through trauma. And I think that for a lot of us, all of us, it's okay to be scared. It's okay to be, to have doubts about something, but don't make decisions based on that right now. Take a step back for a second and get some distance from that. It's like nobody taught us this. Was it Jack Pransky wrote the book, but they didn't teach us or something?
Oh, somebody should have told us.
Have you read that book?
Yes, love it.
They don't teach us how the system works. I mean, they do teach us how the system works, but that's not the divine system, the spiritual system and the machinery around the spiritual system. And so I don't blame a lot of people for, getting caught up and then getting caught up some more and getting caught up some more, because none of us, we didn't learn this in our our formal education. It was,
yeah, that's right. And then by the time you enter the conversation, like say as an adult, you've already got so many kind of belief systems, for the want of a better phrase, of how you think it works anyway. So it's not like you're starting from a clean slate. It's like you need to kind of tear down what you think you already know, which unfortunately is so pervasive in society. So it's really quite uncomfortable to be like looking in basically the opposite direction from what we've been taught. So it's no wonder, honestly, to all the humans out there, guys, we've got you. Okay. I see. Totally get it. Yeah.
And that's the thing. It's, we are, we're all on this spinning rock together, but at the same time, we all have a different human experience. And we don't really see that as a lot of it being made up. And especially when it comes to how much more made up when bad things happen to us. But I think because people have so much invested in their trauma and their experience, and therapists tell them something completely different. I mean, the investment part is hard for the ego to let go of. What's been your experience with that with clients? I mean, is it? I mean, I'm not sure. Do you work with a specific population of folks, or are you?
Maybe not necessarily. I generally say that I love to coach with people who identify as overthinkers. And hey, guess what? That's everybody. Because every problem, if you want to call it that, is a problem of overthinking. So the way it manifests for people is like smoking, drugs, alcohol, procrastination, or just like this pervasive feeling that they could be doing so much more with their life. But what's stopping them is just a ton of thought. And the content of that thought can differ. It could be like related to the behavior. I need to drink, I need to smoke, and need to do this or whatever, or like constant negative self-talk, or like all sorts of things. But what we kind of like talk about is how the content of the thinking doesn't actually matter. And I know I'm not answering your question, but I will in a second.
I'm loving this. Go ahead. That's good.
It's a huge thing for people who have grown up in the way that things are set up around us in terms of giving our thinking so much importance. So to kind of like open that up with them during our conversations, like, oh, hey, what if what you think actually doesn't matter? What if your thinking is full of shit, right? And what does that actually mean then? Because if you don't need to listen to your thinking, people are like, well, how would I even navigate life? And this is the cool thing. And this is why I love what like you do, Sam.
Drum roll,
like,
please.
So many other people. It's like, yes. Okay, wait. So you don't need your thinking to navigate life because there's something else which has got your back.
Yes.
And that's just like, people use different words for it, but I just call it either just nature or the intelligence of life. But even like the most shrewd scientists among us will agree that there's something cool that kind of is informing growth and thriving and spinning the planets and all that stuff. Like sometimes people get a bit squirmy if you kind of take it down the spirituality route, although kind of my goal is to like normalize that conversation and be like, hey, spirituality isn't like, putting rocks under a full moon and, cleansing your chakras. It's understanding that, hey, human being, you're lived by this incredible, infinite creative potential of the universe. I think we just borrowed that one from Michael Neal, but it's so good.
Listen, we all steal each other's stuff.
Good.
Yes. It's going back since Shakespeare. I mean, Shakespeare stole stuff. I mean, that was before, but yeah, it's like the universe they've got us if you allow
it. Yes. But people really need to exactly. But we need to kind of like get a feel for that ourselves. And once you get a feel for this kind of wisdom or intuition or whatever you want to call it, and the language doesn't matter, by the way, then you kind of get more of a sense that this sped up thinking, the thinking that's telling you to procrastinate or, have an affair or drink or whatever, like when you kind of see that you don't need any of that. And also, it's not about you. Like, I love saying to my clients, you know what you think is none of your business, because it's so it's so impersonal and arbitrary. And like you already said earlier when we were talking, Sam, it comes and it goes. Like, why are we paying so much attention to something that's coming and going? Like, it's so funny that we do, but when we start to realize that we don't need to, because there's something underneath that which is fucking magical, like that's when things start to change. You said, like, did I have experience of, I think maybe coaching someone that's possibly come from a therapy background or something?
Yes,
we were talking about how therapy.
I think a lot of my clients have come from a very traditional background. Where,
Yes.
Doing the work,
right.
The work. Yeah.
Yes, and what
the processing and
the processing. So isn't it funny how like I've only had a couple
and this is no offense to therapists, they're well-meaning.
Oh, not at all. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
and all they've done as well is they've helped us to get to where we are today too. Like, it all kind of builds on each other, but just some of it. And when I say this, I mean our exploration of how we think human functioning works. It builds on each other, but a lot of it is just innocently gone in the wrong direction. But that's okay. But with people that have had therapy before they come to maybe coaching with us or our colleagues, is they're so used to going back. Like, oh, let's talk about, like, well, why were you anxious? Do you remember the first time you were anxious? And like talking about, oh, well, it might have been because of my childhood and this and this and this. And it's my experience that kind of learning that and exploring that can be helpful for people. It gives them kind of like, oh, right, yeah. And it opens them up to possibilities that their anxiety is not their fault, not that it's anyone's fault. But it's not helpful long term for any change. And going back over that, like, it just seems meaningless. It's like, what's under your anxiety? If anxiety is sped up thinking that has nothing to do with you, but we've just innocently attached to it, right? If it's nothing to do with you, what if that's true? And what if there is this intelligence of life that's running through you? Like, it just opens up so many possibilities. And then they forget.
And then we remember again.
And then we come back.
It's it's kind of like I always use this metaphor, but it's kind of an outdated metaphor because people don't listen to FM AM radio anymore. But it's like the signal's not going to be perfect all the time, right? We're going to have multipath distortion, right? You're going to tune into your favorite radio station. We'll think of that as thought and thinking, and sometimes we have a poor signal. And I don't know if you've listened to a lot of Aaron Turner stuff. I love him.
Yes.
He talks about the quality, when the quality of our thinking is pretty crappy, when we're just, when it's just for no reason, we need to find out why. We need to do a forensic investigation on why I'm in a pissy mood. Well, cause you're in a pissy mood. Like, I mean, sometimes your car backfires. Okay. But if the oxygen light goes on, well, that means that, okay. You pull over to the side of the road and you take a deep breath and you figure out what's going on and then you get back on the road again. I mean, that we have this brilliant system within us that's designed as the ultimate, feeling thinking barometer, but it's not for us to believe when we're really caught up thinking that Sally is the reason why we're in such a pissy mood. But we've created those neural connections because we believe that thinking so much over time that it's become truth, that we think it's truth, but it's still made up. And I think for a lot of people that, have habituated themselves like we all have in many respects to certain types of behaviors, that's hard to unwrap for people. I mean,
yes.
And even for me sometimes, like, for me, and I've shared this on my podcast and also in my Instagram, driving on the freeway, and I could drive in the same patch of road and have the best drive of my life. Beautiful Southern California day, the windows down, 70 degrees out, which is like, I don't know, 18 Celsius. Terrible conversions. I think it's,
Thanks for that.
Celsius. Yes. I want to make sure that,
this is an inclusive podcast.
This is that's exactly right. I want to make sure that, So it's like a little 20 Celsius. So I could drive on that same patch of road and be completely fine and have the best drive of my life. Conversely, 2 days later, I could be driving on that same stretch of road and just be, in panic mode and anxious.
Yes.
My brain's needs to find that fall guy. And I'm like, oh yeah, it's because of, this is the patch of road where I have the panic attacks.
Yes. But like, if you're in that state of mind, and like you said, how Aaron Turner calls it like pissy mood, if you're in a pissy mood and you think you need to search for the reason why, well, here's the thing. Everything's going to look like shit when you're in a pissy mood. It's the wrong way round, right? So if you're looking for a reason, honey, you're going to find them, okay? Because everything looks that way because of your state of mind. But the actual circumstances of your life, they're just what they are. They're not good or bad, but tomorrow they could look amazing. It's how you're feeling. And guess what? It doesn't actually matter how you're feeling because that's going to be moving through anyway. If people could understand that like low moods are normal, I would just love that. Like I've had loads of clients that thought, oh my God, I thought I had bipolar. I thought I had this. I thought I had, any number of diagnoses.
I thought that way too. Yeah.
Right.
We all have.
I mean, yes, I think we've all been like, have I got bipolar at some point or another? But it's like, hey, guess what? We're just human beings. Right. And it's so freeing when you see that. Oh, it's so good. Yeah. I love what you said about.
When we take a step back and really look at what's going on and we take all the labels off and we take all the story made up behind it, you don't have to be spiritual. You don't have to be, what's it called? Oh my God, the type of meditation. What do you call that meditation? Touch of the T,
Oh, transcendental or I don't know.
Yeah, TM. I don't know. It's an acronym for TM. I think it's
I don't know.
We were in a walking meditation all day long, but because it's not, it's not Vegas, Las Vegas between our, it's calm. It's a quiet voice. It's when our thinking kind of slows down, kind of to like the speed of life, like where it's our default state of who we are. It's uncomfortable to a lot of people because they're used to, Times Square between their ears, right? They're used to it's fireworks up there. They think is how truth should show up, right? And then they're disappointed when they get quiet, and then some insight comes through, and they're like, "Oh, that was all right. Well, that's not a big deal. Why should I believe that shit?" And I think that's hard for a lot of people, especially like during the pandemic. When people had to be like going on. I mean, you're dealing with it right now, like being in this kind of state of like suspended animation. This is the first time in a long time that people really have had to like be with themselves.
Yes. And particularly with the kind of static environment that a lot of people have experienced during lockdown, like after the novelty of the want of a better word wears off, we're in our houses, like doing the same thing, in, out. So without the distractions of daily life that we were used to, a lot of people, it was very illuminating for them. But I found, I don't know about you, Sam, but I found that kind of helpful when I'm talking to my clients that are new to exploring how we work as humans, because having that kind of baseline gave them the opportunity to really see like, oh, hey, I feel terrible in the morning and okay at night. I had a good few days and a bad few days, but nothing's changing. And lockdown kind of helped us see that because it's relatively static, as I said. So opening them up to like, oh, hey, how come I actually feel okay, but nothing's changed? And then I feel actually really good, actually. Why is that? And then I feel really bad. What's different? So what's different? And exploring with people, like what's changing is your thoughts, not, like being in a traffic jam or whatever and all the other little annoyances of daily life that we had outside of lockdown. Like, I just think that that's a great way for people to just stop and be like, oh yeah, my experience is constantly changing and it's not for the reasons I thought. It's not the outside world. Like that can be a complete game changer and opens us up for a great conversation.
Can I use that one? That's a good one.
Really take it. It's yours. We share them all.
Get that nugget. We do. And people like, I heard someone else say that. I'm like, yeah, we all plagiarize each other because we want to help y'all and we want to help ourselves.
Yes.
And help y'all. And part of it is that's how this works. And that's what Sid shared about, what he talked about. It's like, I'm just telling all of you how it really works. And this is not new information, all the great prophets have been like knocking on the door saying, hey, right? I mean, Buddhism, this is one of their tenets. I mean, you look at all the great sages, they've been pointing to this for thousands of years. Jesus, Buddha, Maharishi. You frame your all-star, your favorite all-star prophet, and unless not Jonestown, God forbid, but I'm talking about like the ones that that have solved that space that you and I have been pointing to with our clients, like to make them see it's like you can be below the noise, and it's okay to be in the noise too, but you don't have to be scared of the noise. And if you're scared of the noise, that's okay too. That's like, but why? It's like, well, I don't like feeling that. I'm like, well, I don't like feeling that way either, but I know that I'm going to be okay. Like,
yes, I really
scared of not being okay.
Exactly. And through these kind of conversations, when people change, they realize the meaning of thoughts and feelings aren't what they think. Like, they're not these important messages. They're not these call to action to do something with your life. When we see thought and feeling for what they are, like thought is this like impersonal, arbitrary, ephemeral energy that's constantly coming in and coming out. It's unreliable and repetitive and negative. When we see that we've got the intelligence of life running through us 100% of the time, so we don't need this thought thing over here that we've been paying a ton of attention to. And then not only that, but when we do start believing the thought, which is a load of rubbish anyway, we've got this cool inbuilt system which lets us know, and they're called feelings. And so when you feel like shit, are we allowed to swear?
You can say it.
Okay.
Shit.
When you feel like shit, that's your feeling being like, oh, hey, human, you're believing all that crap in your head again. Remember, you don't need that. You don't need to listen. Like when people really get a feel for that.
The feeling sucks, but it's your friend.
Exactly.
And none of us escape any of that, but we also can let it move through us, knowing that we have this system that's so perfectly designed to guide us through life.
Exactly. That's right.
It wasn't the anxiety screaming at me, my thinking screaming at me to swim parallel to the shoreline, because that's how you get out of a rip current, ladies and gentlemen. I'm sure all of you know that, but just in case, swim parallel to the ocean. Don't panic. Or panic and don't panic. But that wasn't my brain telling me to do. It was whatever. When I got calm, I don't know why, I just got calm, and that was the insight coming through, saying, okay, you know what you need to do. There wasn't like someone like, you need to swim parallel to the shoreline in order for you to save your life. It was just like, okay, you need to do this.
Yeah.
And there wasn't like anything like remarkable about it.
Yes. And I love that you've said that, Sam, because I think that people that are kind of like exploring this kind of stuff for the first time, they do think that the things we talk about, like wisdom and insight and stuff, they're like, it sounds mystical and esoteric.
There's no burning bush, ladies and gentlemen.
It's not. It's so ordinary. Like so many people, like everyone out there is having tons of insights. Like everyone is having hundreds of insights a week, but they don't know it, because that kind of thing we like dismiss. We like have an insight and we're like, oh no, that's stupid. Or if we're feeling like pockets of calm and peace, we're like, oh shit, I'm not being vigilant enough. Like we're completely ignoring like these little nudges that like, oh hey, I'm here to kind of help you, and you keep pushing me away. But they'll keep coming. They'll keep coming whether you talk to Sam or me or not, okay? But you're all having insights. You probably had about 67 before you turned on this podcast, but you just didn't realize what they were, because they're not the burning bush, right? They're calm, they're obvious, they're so subtle that often we'll find we're doing a thing we haven't thought, like with the rip current, you've probably found yourself swimming parallel. You didn't like hear, oh, you should swim parallel today, Sam. It's more like
it wasn't
you find yourself doing it. Right.
And it's like
easy. And so cool. It really is cool. But once you kind of like get a feel for that and it's illuminated, like when you know that that's what it is, you see them more and more. And that's so helpful. But like, I just want everyone to know that it's already happening for you. It's already happening
in real time.
It's really awesome.
The wonderful thing, it's an autonomic kind of process that's built into you, that's wanting you to just, but being so subtle, just to see it. And because again, it's not, fire and lights. It's this little, like, not even a voice. It's just the calm.
Yeah, exactly.
And we do our best work when we're in that quiet space. But again, what makes it, I think it's so a blessing and a curse is when we forget. And that piece when we forget, like I forgot, we think there's something wrong, or like, this is 3 principles. What's that mumbo jumbo, right? It's like, oh, this is just another, course in understanding, self-awareness and, the estimate, whatever it is. But it really isn't. And that's why a lot of, especially clients, they want to know what the modality is. Like, so what's the method? Is it like the Sedona method where you kind of like, and I learned the Sedona method, and having to remember to say that when you're in the, caught up in something, it's all natural. Like, why would you put layers on a system that's perfectly designed to settle on its own? As you said, the brain's going to just grab for straws, trying to figure out, okay, this is what needs to be done. I need to figure this out for you.
Yeah, because it just feels like it's doing something then, isn't it? That's why we kind of attach to tools and strategies, well done, Siobhan, and techniques, because the brain kind of likes to feel like we were talking before, when it wants things labeled and categorized and boxed off. So if we're saying, oh, hey, there's nothing to do, the brain is going nuts. It's like, what do you mean? I need to make this into a workflow. I need to make this into a process. How do I get from feeling awful and caught up to feeling peaceful? You're telling me there's nothing in between and it's all happening for me and blah, blah, blah. Well, I can't work with that, says the brain. Give me the process.
Yeah, and it's like the Venus flytrap in was it Little Shop of Horrors? Feed me, Seymour, feed me. Do you remember that? It's American. It was a Broadway play too. It was a Venus flytrap. Like it was always hungry, wanted to eat people and things.
Yeah,
that's kind of what the brain is like. I need a stimulus. I need something to point to, because without that, but that's the brain's growing edge. But who all of us are, there is no growing edge. There's just our human experience, our human psychology, and living through our psychology. And the most interesting thing, and I love this, is when I first heard, as a grown adult sometimes, sometimes not. As a grown adult, but I pretend to be sometimes. When I heard Michael Neal say, we're not living in the experience of our outside reality, we're living the experience of thought and thinking. That's when I was like, oh, okay. Nah, come on.
Yeah.
This is a point.
But you had to see that for yourself for that to have an impact, right? You know how sometimes we hear someone say something and it completely lands in a new way, but they could have been saying that, like I've definitely had this with certain things. Like, one that I thought the other day, actually, that I've read about 75,000 times, seen it on the internet, on loads of memes, and had people say it to me, like, everything you need is already inside you. Yeah. And I spent 20 years being like, I'm like, that is absolute crap. Particularly if you're like caught up in like old behaviors and feeling like ass, if someone's like, all you need is inside you, like there's going to be a lot of the F word coming out there, right? But I heard that in a completely fresh way a few months ago, and I was like, oh yeah. But that happens naturally, and that kind of happens on our own time, right? And so the stuff that we're saying to people, like there'd be a lot of people listening that are like, what? Like, what do they even mean? Like, what do you mean intelligence of life? And what do you mean swimming parallel to a rip current? And what do you mean this? That's okay. Like, don't even think about it. Don't worry about it, because you'll see, if there's something for you to see, you'll see it. And there's a ton for you to see, and it will just happen when it's ready. Like, just trust that.
And you're not going to see it. I love that, because I think it's very liberating, don't you think? Because it takes the pressure off.
There's nothing to do. There's nothing to do. How good is that?
And so, I was listening to, it was Michael Neal and George Pransky. For those of you who don't know who they are, George Pransky worked with Sid Banks, who had this spiritual epiphany, this experience where he kind of saw what we're pointing to, which is nothing new. Again, all your favorite prophets, they saw it. You can actually see it anywhere. I mean, but if you want that experience, you can sit in the back of your church, or your synagogue or your mosque. Just sit there, and you'll see what we're talking about. But George was telling this story, and I wanted to share this with you, about a client he had that was stuck, had like writer's block, which I've had and sucks. And this guy was stuck in the same chapter for like 7 years. Have you heard this story? Because I want to.
Yes, but I think that other people should hear it, because it's a good one.
It's a wonderful story. And this guy was stuck in the same chapter for 7 years. And George looks at him and says, well, maybe you're just not good at predicting how long it's going to take you to write the book.
Yes.
But it's, when I first heard that, I was like, what? It was totally threw me off. Like, he's so freaking right. But at the same time, my ego's like, what do you mean? Like, maybe he just shouldn't write the book. Or my ego's like, maybe he's just not the greatest. Maybe he's not the greatest writer. Or maybe, he needs to end the book in that chapter. But that wasn't insight and wisdom coming out of my mouth. That was my thinking. And I was like, holy shit. But then we forget again. And I think that's the dance. And when we're able to kind of like be okay with forgetting, the remembering part is so wonderful.
That's right. And I think to that story as well, that guy ended up finishing his book. I think it was like a year and a half later, but he ended up doing it. But he was probably caught up in a lot of, and this is what we all do, right? This is how it should go. Like, God, that's just the worst kind of phrase. Like, if you're writing a book, it should be take this amount of time. It should be this, it should be that. And just not only with books, but the other milestones that like humans like to measure their life with. Like, I'm X age, so I should have this, this, and this career or family or whatever. And we have all of these like heavily constructed and solid looking like archetypes for, well, this is education, this is the business world. I mean, the funniest example, I think, is like looking at the stock market, right? And it's all made up. It's all actually made up. It's so funny. Yeah. And we just go nuts about it. But I would just love for people to just not take everything so seriously, like including their own thinking. Like it's all just like layers and layers and layers of thought that appear real. Okay. But underneath that, there's something else. And if people can kind of like get a feel for that, it's just really awesome. Like we were talking about the forgetting thing. And what I love, I say this to myself all the time, is like, I don't need to be seeing clearly. I only need to see that I'm not. So and how you'll know is the feeling.
I need to
You can borrow that one as well, Sam. Yes. Yeah, you take it. And it's so awesome. So if I'm feeling awful, and just the same with like my clients and friends and everyone, if you're feeling bad, it's just that inbuilt alert that we talked about earlier, waking you up and reminding you, oh, hey, you know how life looks right now? That's not true. Don't worry, just hang out and you'll feel better. And it's so awesome. So you don't need to be like on top of your game or writing books or swimming against rip currents. If you're feeling bad, the way that life looks is not true. And it's so simple, right? And if we can just know that, and to know it, you need to feel like shit a lot of the time. And that's great because you will. Because you're a human.
That's exactly. Yeah. Human beings. Wow. Like we are. The wow part is when we see the human experience as as an experience in italics. Because I had a client years ago that was in recovery and was really scared about going back and finishing law school and then taking the bar exam because of he's fallen off the wagon a couple of times, and his thinking was, oh yeah, because this has happened, there's a cause and effect for this. There may be like consequences for some things that you do in life. Obviously, if you hurt people or if you get a DUI, I mean, yeah, there are consequences for actions, but he was so caught up in the notion that he's failed at sobriety. That means that what's next that he's going to fail at. And I think that we create these habituated thoughts about things innocently, and then we kind of rewire our brain. And then every time it comes up, like with me driving on the freeway, and this is what my client was pointing to about how uncomfortable it was for him. I said to him, well, yeah, it's just uncomfortable. But that doesn't mean it's true. You can, like his guy was really anxious. I'm like, you know what? Being anxious is not the best feeling in the world, especially when you're really feeling it, but it's okay to be anxious. But it doesn't mean anything. But when someone's, has this ingrained in their system because they've literally habituated themselves to this kind of thinking, for some people, the noise is like their best friend. And I think that when the noise is your best friend, there's like, you got to be curious about, well, there's got to be more than just the noise. I mean, yeah. You remember when there wasn't noise? I mean, and that's what I said to him. I said to him, you didn't get into law school because of the noise, right? I'm like, and this guy's like, anybody will talk to him. He's like a brilliant guy, nice kid. Like, just a lovely kid. I said, you didn't pass the LSATs in the noise. You didn't fall in love in the noise either. And sometimes it can be noisy, but that's nothing to do with it. You did all these things when you were quiet. And he's like, looked at me. Like, it was really hard for him to kind of see that, but then he kind of saw it. And I said, well, I don't want you to take the bar exam when you're really, really caught up, but I also want you to take the bar exam when you're caught up, because you now know that it doesn't mean anything. But I think people again, they forget, but because it's so uncomfortable, it must mean something, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
For me, it meant something for when I was standing on the shore, looking at the shoreline, thinking about what happened yesterday. It meant something, but I didn't attach anything to it, because I saw the racket the brain was playing on me.
Yes. I mean, if you think of what was actually happening when you were stood on the shore is like in the physical world, if we want to call it that, like nothing really. You were just stood there, like your feet were in the sand, maybe a soft breeze, I don't know. But and you said earlier that you felt fear, but to look at that, like an outsider looking in, like what is there to be fearful of that there? Yet we intensely feel the feeling of fear. Why? Because of what your brain was serving up to you, right? And the brain, remember, it's just trying to keep us alive, folks. So of course it's like, oh, water, remember what happened? We nearly died. You're not doing that to me again, are you? And that's generating the feeling of fear, because remember what we've talked about, that feeling is your inbuilt alert system telling you, what did I just say? That you're not seeing life clearly right now. So when your brain is saying, oh God, we're going to die, this is terrible, you can't go back out there again, Sam, that feeling of fear is saying, oh, hey, life isn't how it currently looks to you. The water isn't scary like it currently looks to you. The possibility of death isn't coming just like it looks to you.
Right. And I think, once people can really see that, and everyone's volume is different, turn up to a different level.
Right.
But for people that start seeing it, and I tell my client, you're going to still feel that. You're still going to, it's not like it's going to go away. I mean, it's not going to go away, and that's okay too, because the more you point to it being your friend, the more you point to it trying to tell you, it's like the diagnostic system in your car telling you, you're sped up right now. You're just sped up. Pull over the side of the road, turn the car off, let the radiator cool down.
Yes.
And if you can't pull over, it's just saying, this is not the time to believe this right now. This is just a glitch in the system. And that for me, when I first kind of had that, when I first got introduced to the principles or this understanding or how the system works, that for me was just like the game changer. But then I'll forget and slip up again. I mean,
Right. Yes.
Right. And I'll do it again and again and again. And that's okay too. When we make it not okay, it's when we've kind of lost the plot for a second. It was funny because I think there was an interview with Sid Banks, and he said, Sid, have you ever like doubted this understanding? And he's like, yeah, for 20 seconds. And then I remembered again, right?
Right. Oh, I've not heard that. Well, that's interesting to hear that.
I got tapes in the vault,
nice.
on my computer. Yeah. So.
Well, that's kind of reassuring, isn't it? Like yeah, awesome. And isn't it so cool just the way that you've described that wonderfully? Like, given that we learn how the system works, right? And given that we're going to forget that, right, that's done. We're sorted. Tick. That's just how it works. That just frees us up to kind of just go and play and do whatever and like know that we're safe. And so you can feel anxious, and your client can feel like terrified about like the law school, and we can feel scared of like freeways and whatever, because it's going to pass through and it doesn't really mean anything anyway.
And that when we hear that, when we really see that, we see it more and more and more, and we continue to point in the direction of our true nature, things open up for you. I mean, look where you are. Your life has expanded in geographically and otherwise in so many brilliant ways. I mean, you followed your dream, and that wasn't from being, I'm sure you were scared to death about
Yeah, well, it's funny you say that because I left the UK to go traveling and ended up in New Zealand. And I was only kind of coming across the principles towards the end of that. That was about 4 or 5
I didn't know
years
that.
ago. Yeah. And so it's really funny because I look back now and I had a really, what I described at the time as a bad time when I was backpacking in Asia. And it's so funny because, and that's what led me to the principles actually, like kind of like, you know, when you're incessantly searching for the answers on the internet and one thing led to another and led
Google
to
search
another.
away, ladies and gentlemen.
But I remember thinking, oh my God, why am I having such a terrible time? Look at all these travelers around me. Everyone's having a great time. And I was so miserable and lonely. But I thought that was a problem. So looking back now, I was like, oh, I was just experiencing like thought and feeling, right? But because I attached to that and gave it so much meaning, like, oh my God, I've made a huge mistake. I've left everything behind. What am I doing? I'm having a terrible time. Because I attached to it, and the more attention I gave it, the more it stayed, right? Because we've talked today that thought and feeling move through. If we let it move through, right?
Right.
But if you're attaching to something like, and this is what like your clients do and what my clients do, I bet, is when we're feeling, any crap feeling, and we are looking for the meaning, which is in the content of our thoughts, which I already said doesn't matter. But when that looks really true and compelling and it needs to be fixed, we need to fix our job or our relationship or our worth as a human or get more accomplishments or be a better backpacker, like anything. And when we can't do that or whatever, then we're attaching to that and feeding it with our attention. So it's no wonder I felt like shit every day because I was thinking the same old fucking thoughts.
And you're living the experience of your fucking shit. It was the Siobhan fucking shit chapter, but it was completely made up. I mean, you know, it would be a great screenplay. I mean, you know, it's like we don't see that our brain is the greatest screenplay, like a screenplay writer, greatest producer, greatest director in the history of humans. And that's great if you're Stephen King, because then he's made lots of money and, you know, but Stephen King's a great example because he's like, this is, you know, my brain is full of dark stuff. I mean, if you've read Carrie and Pet Sematary, you know, that came from his brain, ladies and gentlemen. I mean, like, but we all have a Pet Cemetery up here. Well, that's weird.
Oh, yes. Right? I love that you said that.
We all have it.
Really makes sense.
But
I bet like Stephen King doesn't. So this is great, right? So Stephen King is having thoughts about like these like gross pets and being brought back to life and all monsters and horrid things and all the things. And so he takes them and standing up. He takes these thoughts and puts them into like amazingly best-selling books, right? But our clients and me and you and everyone, we're having terrible, scary thoughts too. But instead, we're believing them and making them mean something about our lives and ourselves. Like, it's so funny. So look at Stephen King's relationship to his thoughts. Like, that guy is awesome. He's like, oh God, look at all these thoughts I'm having. I know, I'm going to put them into a book and not make them personal, right? Isn't that cool?
But and that's the greatest example of, you know, because we do, all of us have a Pet Cemetery between our heads. We all have a Stanley Kubrick movie between our heads, and that's okay, you know, as long as you don't act on some of the Stanley, you know. Then especially, it's interesting because Stephen King went to the hotel where all this paranormal activity was happening in The Shining, but he actually didn't need to do that. Stephen King thought he needed to go to room 217, whatever that. You remember the movie, the book, the old lady who strangled the kid.
Shining.
In The Shining. He didn't, it was already written there. He already had it before even going there. So like, we don't need to go to room 217 because it's already room 217. I think it's 217. It's already between our ears. And that's the brilliant thing about our brain, because once we see how it works and see how the system works, it's like, oh my God, life is like fun, really fun. Like rip current fun. No, okay.
Yes.
It's like life becomes really what it's supposed to look like. And when bad things happen, it's supposed to look how it's supposed to look like. But we also kind of point back to, you know, our true nature or that intelligence in us or within us when bad things happen too. You know, and I've heard so many different 3Ps coaches and you know, they've been knocked for saying, well, that's spiritual bypass. Have you heard that spiritual bypass thing?
Yeah.
Like, oh, that's made up too, though, by the way. You know, someone made that up. I think it was a psychologist made that up. And again, it's like we can really make ourselves our own kind of advocate of of being okay with the thought turbulence, as well as loving this richness that we've, some of us maybe have discovered later in life because of the fact that we've been, looking at it, from the Stephen King novel in our heads. Right?
Yeah, that's right. And even just kind of thinking about this and thinking about, well, what is my thinking and what's real and what Stephen King movie and what all of that is thought, right? And so thought isn't good or bad, it's just energy. But when it's clogging up our mind, I think of it as like a big pot, with like when the water boils and slops over the edge, and it makes a hissing sound on a gas burner, like and that, like, so your head is kind of like that when it's full of thoughts. And but if you like leave it, well, you may need to turn it down actually, but it's not a perfect metaphor.
But the turning down part, it does it automatically. I mean, like,
yeah, that's nice. That brings it back, Sam.
We'll bring it back.
So, so if your brain is like this boiling pot of water, like ferociously, like spilling over, and you've got something which is going to turn that heat down on its own, right? That's awesome. Yeah. But unfortunately, us humans are accidentally keeping it turned up by like all the attention and thinking more about our thinking and all the things. Like, so if I like just wanted to say, just kind of simplify everything for people, it would be kind of like, maybe start with looking towards the quiet, I guess. Well, the first thing for people that are really caught up is like, firstly, just suspend everything you think you know about anxiety and how the system works. Just forget all that for a moment and just trust us just for a sec.
Just for 1 second.
Just for 1 second.
Right.
Yeah. And hey, you can go back anytime. Go back anytime to how you think it works and see which way is maybe more helpful for you. But let's just pretend that all that's happening when you feel terrible is that feeling is letting you know, oh, hey, your pot is boiling over. And it doesn't even matter what's in the pot at all. It doesn't matter if it's work, relationships, or any of the things. It doesn't matter. What matters is that it is boiling over. But hey, no problem, because it's going to settle down on its own. And guess what? You don't need to do anything. So if we can look towards that and just be like, don't overthink it. Don't be like, oh, how do I do that? How do I do that? Just kind of like be like, oh, okay, what if it's just a ton of thought and it doesn't matter. It's nothing to do with you. You don't have to do anything, and kind of hang out and let's see if you feel better tomorrow, in 10 minutes, next week. Just kind of notice how thoughts and feelings change, and they're not the big, scary, important calls to action that we've all been taught they are. They're not. Okay.
And I love that boiling pot metaphor is perfect, because the boiling pot will settle. It will settle on its own. You don't even need to turn the range up. What do you call it?
Yeah.
The gas off.
Yeah.
And I think, what do you think? Like, I think the best metaphor for the boiling pot kind of calming, the water coming back down, and is watching, like, I have my niece and nephew. Their pots are boiling all the time, because I can't. My niece is 8 and my nephew is 5, and their kids are the greatest kind of examples of the inner resilience, and the boiling pot metaphor I'm stealing from you too.
Yes. Well, that was a collaboration. The boiling pot. That's ours. It's ours to share. Yeah.
That's right. But so I look at my niece and nephew, and my nephew will have a fire and brimstone temper tantrum, like throwing stuff, and like the world's coming to an end because someone stole his I'm looking at it, his fire truck. But then, like, I don't know, not even 6 minutes later, it's like it never happened, because the switch to calm down the rising hot steaming lava of water, lava is better, it calmed down on its own, and he didn't have to do anything.
Yes. And that's hard for adults, because your nephew, like, he's not yet been kind of taught. Like, he's smarter than all of us, Sam. Yeah. Like, the rest of us are like, oh my God, my fire truck, this is the end of the world. What does this mean for my future? What does this mean for my family?
Right. It's like, what are the implications? Like,
yes, exactly that. Okay, what are the implications of this for my life?
Right. And then we go into the doom and gloom, the future.
Yes. And that keeps the pot boiled up. Because like the fire truck is a big, huge deal, but actually no.
And that's why like people love soap operas. That's why soap operas been around for 60 years. The same soap opera's been around because they're playing off the brain, what the brain does. Like, you can, your brain is the greatest soap opera writer. It's going to just leave bullshit. And then there's this thing called feeling. And the difference between, the adult soap opera and the kids soap opera is that there's no, what do you call it? Help me here. There's no, not residuals. The soap opera goes into, what do you call it when they keep getting paid? It's been around for so long. It's like Seinfeld. They get residuals. Oh my God. Syndication. Thank you. Syndication.
Oh, I wouldn't have even known that. Syndication. Oh,
it's an LA Hollywood La La Land thing. So syndication is when a TV show it's so popular and it's been on for so long that they get paid for every episode if the network picks it up, right? Or say Netflix picks it up. If it's like Downton Abbey is probably the series is in syndication. That's kind of the difference between, and I'm stretching this metaphor. I'm doing my best to be creative with this. The children, there's never any they don't get any residuals for their temper tantrum. It just ends right there, right? Adults, their drama goes into syndication. I mean, have you had friends that been talking about the same thing, issue about?
Yes.
They're beautiful. They're a beautiful person. They're healthy. They're circling the wagons and Sally, your drama, your soap opera is in syndication. It sounds like I've used that before because it's the truth. It's like kids are just brilliant.
They really are. I think you should probably get your nephew on the podcast and let's see what was kind of going through his mind.
It'll be a very short one.
He'd be like, I don't even remember. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. But when we can see that, we can see that, but social media and shiny, flashy things. It's the brain is a machine. It's affected by that. And I always say our operating system really hasn't had an upgrade since the Paleolithic era, which is really true. Oh yes, so true. Honestly, that's so true. So why are we putting so much we're putting so much it's kind of remember the old telephones? What if the technology never improved? We're putting so much this is God. Thought is God. Well, yes. Where do you think it's coming from? It's coming from a system that's ancient. Yes, I so agree. I think about this about a ton of stuff. So we made up all this stuff years ago, let's just say in the Industrial Revolution or the Agricultural Revolution. Yeah. Take the 40-hour work week, something like that, where it's hey, and things are changing now in post-COVID world, but we ordinarily for ages worked Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. We made that up ages ago because it fit what we were doing at the time in terms of, whatever was going on. But things have changed so much with technological advances and just the way that globalization, all the things. But we've never gone back. We've never gone back to assess all the processes and systems and things that we made up to check if they're still fit for purpose. If we did that with if you bought a fridge 20 years ago and never went back to check if it was working, then you're going to get very sick from food poisoning, right? And we go back and check all kinds of other stuff, but the actual fabric of our society, we've never gone back and been hey, what is this working thing? Does that make sense? And all things that we've labeled as that's procrastination. That's I can't think of any others, but laziness? I think yes, that's what they look like, and it's all made up, and it's not been readdressed since. We've not kind of refreshed any of this old thought created crap, quite honestly. And it's exactly and I love that because it's a good kind of metaphor for why for how our brain works. It's the greatest tool, but it's also a tool that's so misunderstood and misused innocently. And we're here to tell you that's okay. We're here to point you back because the greatest gift for coaches and for someone the gift that you share with your clients that that invest time and money in your work and the work that you share with them is that once they can get pointed back to the simplistic truth of who they are, and they can get to see more of that delicious quiet. It's like learning a language you've always known, you've always spoken, but you've just been distracted so much and you've not been able to speak that language. I think we all speak that same kind of language, which is that quiet space, as our friend Michael calls a space, the forethought and in the space within. And once we see that, it's like, oh, wow, game changer. Game changer.
I completely agree. Yeah.
And then you forget again.
Yes.
Well, Siobhan, I got to tell you, we got to do this again because
yeah, definitely. I love it.
This is wonderful, and I want to hear more about what's going on with you and across the globe and then some, and I think you have a lot to offer, and the work that you do with your clients is just beyond transformative. So I want to thank you, and you need to get a podcast too, because it'd be brilliant.
Well, thank you very much. But it's people like you that have kind of inspired my work as well. So it's just been awesome to kind of see the way that you talk about like this stuff. Like I found that really great. That's why I was like stalking you. Like, when's your book coming out, Sam?
Oh yeah, that's there's a lot of thinking around that too.
I bet. That's coming up soon though, eh?
And well, it's we're looking at probably mid to late fall because remember, okay. I go back to the Dopransky story.
Okay.
When it's supposed to come, but it's coming out. I mean, I got a lot of thinking around that. We can have a conversation about that.
Okay. Maybe we'll leave that one then. But guys, go and buy it when it comes out. Don't forget.
Yes. And I can't wait. And the irony, it's called Fearless. Damn, you're so
well, it's been so fun today. Thank you so much for having me on. I've just absolutely loved it. It's been great.
Me too. Thank you, Siobhan. And
thank you.
Keep doing what you're doing because
yeah, you too. Thank you. Let's change some lives.
Yes, and have fun doing it.
Thank you. Same to you.
And enjoy the rip currents.